I discovered my first comic book, and I guess on my own, my mother says, when I was about, no older than 4 and a half, maybe younger, because there's a photograph of me when I was 3 something at a zoo looking over the shoulder of a guy who's reading the Sunday Funnies. So I think I was interested in that format even long before I could read. And it was probably a Superman or Batman that I started with, but I soon discovered all the others, including Captain Marvel, Captain America, and the rest of them. As the superheroes died off in the latter 40s, I still kept reading comics. I never gave them up the way some people do. They give them up for a few years for, sports, girls, just different interests. I kept doing the other things, but I never gave up comics entirely. It's more as if they gave me up. Over the next few years, the characters started coming back, and then the Fantastic Four came out, and I bought 2 copies of that because I figured that would be worth something someday. And it was. When the price went up to 50 cents, I sold my spare. By the time I went to work for DC, actually, my favorite comics in terms of liking to read them were mostly the Marvel comics, but I still love those DC characters, Green Lantern, Flash. Hawkman's always been a real favorite of mine. But at the same time, I was aware that the art and writing at Marvel were much better for somebody who's like 20-something years old. As I don't know about a 10 or 12-year-old, but for my age, I had to be kind of trying to become a kid again to read the DC comics. But Marvel had something where there was that extra little subtext and so forth. And I came to work for Marvel just about the time they'd gotten really good. The middle 60s, things were really falling into place. All the major characters had been created from that first round, except Silver Surfer, who was thrown into a Fantastic Four story, a month or so after I went to work. The first comic I ended up writing over the weekend after I quit DC was a Millie the Model comic. It was actually, the actual name of the book was Modeling with Millie. It was the B title of Millie. She was still popular enough to be in 2 comics at that time, although she was kind of fading. From there, I very quickly got a chance to do Patsy and Hetty, which was another teenage and career girl kind of title. I guess the next thing was an Iron Man story that had been plotted by Stan and Gene Colan. It was Colan's first Iron Man story. And Stan rewrote most of it. It ended up kind of a weird credit, sort of like everybody in the office worked on this. My name's on it in between his and the secretary, Then he gave me the dialogue 2 of the latter Doctor Strange stories that Steve Ditko was plotting and drawing. That was fun, and I would have stayed on that, except that he took me off it to and gave that to a guy I'd helped bring in the field, Denny O'Neil, and he took me off it so that I could write Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, and from that, a few months later, to X-Men and Avengers, and I loved group books, and particularly I liked the Avengers, even though I wanted to bring back always Captain America, Iron Man, and Captain America was in there when I started, but he made me take him out soon. And Iron Man and Thor were already gone, and I just didn't like the book that much without them. So I kept agitating for years. Every few months, I'd bring him back in for an issue, and then he'd spot them and make me take them out again.